Good morning, my friend. Today I think I just want to tell you a story. It's not an easy one for me to tell, but I'm going to do my best. I don't trust my own memory of it, but my parents tell me that I was pretty sharp as a kid. That I made connections quickly and picked things up quickly. I have a brother who's 2 years older than I am, and he's incredibly smart. He was my older brother by 2 years, my whole life growing up. So there was incentive and at least possibility, since the age gap wasn't huge, for me to keep up with him. And so that's what I tried to do as best I could. And I was usually pretty successful in that, at least according to my memory and my parents. And both my parents are college graduates, and both of them at points in their lives had been teachers. Both of them are English majors, so academia was emphasized and encouraged. My parents did always say, we want you to do what you want to do. So it's not that I was pinned into a role, like you hear some people tell stories of their parents saying, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or nothing. It was not like that at all. It was that education opens doors for you, and it gives you more options, and why not give yourself that? And I always liked learning, and I was naturally kind of good at it, and so it made me feel good about myself, because every time I impressed someone with my thinking, it was reinforced in me that that is valuable somehow. And I think I had the impression that its value was that it was useful. So this is the pattern I wound up in. And it didn't really stop, for a while at least. I never had to study or try in school, in elementary and middle school. I never really had to go out of my way to make sure I did well on something. The things I didn't do well on was only because I didn't do them. The assignments that I was choosing to complete were not challenging for me up through 8th grade. So I had an attitude that school wasn't doing anything for me, that I already knew most of this stuff. And keep in mind, I'm like 12, 13 at this point. I'm trying to give an accurate picture of that mind state, which is like not one that I agree with or find to be true still. But anyway, I had this attitude that like, why am I wasting my time here? I can easily complete all these things. Whatever. That's not cool for me. What's cool for me is, you know, impressing a grown-up, an adult. That's what gave me a wow, look what I can do. Like, I'm good at this, was not what I was learning up through 8th grade. In 9th grade, they actually start to introduce you to some content. And obviously, I had not surpassed the 8th grade level in all fields of content. I mean, in school, it's language arts, which language arts was always so easy to me. I'm a word person. Math was fine. I learned the ideas in the class, and once I had learned them, they were in me and I could use them. Social studies was the same deal. All the stuff you do in elementary and middle school. I mean, language came easily to me. Sorry for that. It's a big truck. But then you get to high school and you start to specialize a little bit more and you start taking classes in more specific things. And it got to the point where there was no way I was gonna be able to have the ease that I had had in the past anymore. And that's what happened. My freshman year of high school, I was in a class that my high school called Global Studies, which was pretty much a combination of like current events, politics, and geography, maybe would be the way to do it. And my teacher was a good teacher and asked a lot of us and challenged us to think critically in ways we hadn't before. And I had to work. I had to study for tests. I had to really grapple with the ideas that I was writing about in essays in a far more genuine way than I had really ever done before. I still wanted to do well because my whole life it had been, school's easy, you don't have to worry about that. You've got that in the bag. And all of a sudden, I had to study, and I had never practiced studying. Practice. I could do school when it wasn't difficult to grok the idea. But freshman year of high school, I was introduced with the first difficult idea that was like, I don't know the answer. I don't even know how to get to the answer. Like, and then I would learn the content, And I still didn't know. And it's like, what the heck is this? But I was used to getting all the praise from being good at school, for being sharp. And so come ninth grade, all of a sudden that's being challenged. I'm getting tests back and essays back that are not high marks, and I would be lying if I said that my self-worth at that point was unrelated to my grades on my assignments. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I have a feeling I'm not alone in that. So that was tough for me, right? So now I have to learn how to study. Never really had to do it before. Never really practiced like long-term sustained effort on something I care about. It was very much the things that I was asked to do, it was just a matter of doing them, and then they were done. But now it was much more than that. I had to be persistent. I had to deal with failure and not making progress right away. I couldn't have that. I wasn't ready to accept that maybe my sense of identity was not as true as I thought it was. So the solution that I devised, not consciously, of course, was what I found it easy to call negative self-talk. Although the word negative is literally in that phrase, I don't think all negative self-talk is bad. Because if I'm the kind of person who knows that it's wrong to do a certain thing, but that thing somehow benefits me, what you're navigating there is self-interest over collective interest, and the priority balance of that, and the value attribution of that. If I beat someone up because it's fun and it makes me feel good, that's that trade-off of value judgments. But if I do that because it's more important to me that I get to feel good in that moment than that person, but I know deep down that good people don't do that, and that the people who I want to be like don't do that, so therefore I don't want to do that anymore. At that point, negative self-talk is necessary, because what negative self-talk is in that moment is identifying some aspect of your behavior that you don't find to be aligned with who you want to be. I can't get this level here. It's cognitive dissonance. You're engaging in a behavior that you know is not in line with your conception of who you are or who you want to be. So there is a level of criticism that has to exist, or at least of critical mind, that you have to be able to say, hey, you did a thing that you don't want to be doing. So I started using that in about ninth grade. And so when I went home and I had homework and I knew it was going to be challenging and I didn't want to do it because then I was going to have to deal with the idea that I wasn't just naturally good at everything immediately. The way to get myself to do it was, do you want to have worth? Because your worth up until now has been, you're good at school. That's what's important to me, right? So in the scenario of beating someone up so I feel good, the thing that I should be doing, in my mind, at this point, to not beat someone up, is do the homework, is do the thing that you should do. Because at the end of the day, I should do it. I'm willing to say that, in that category, that's something I want to be doing. The person I want to be is the person who does his homework. But the thing for my own gratification, to not have to feel uncomfortable, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not super smart, maybe I'm not special like my parents told me I did, like everyone's parents told them they were. The solution was to tell myself, well, you're not gonna be special if you don't do this damn homework, right? All right, well then do it. And then when I didn't do it, in order to keep that, logically sound, it had to be, you didn't do it. Therefore, you don't have the worth of that person. You don't have the value of being someone who does their homework. So that's my specific situation, right? This is for everything. We grow up, we're young, we get it in our heads that, and it's usually the thing we're talented at, is where our worth comes from. Sometimes it just comes easily. Sometimes you just love it so much that you work on it, and it's okay because you love it so much. That's my brother with engineering. It's not that engineering was as easy and natural to him as language is to me. It's that he just loves it so unbelievably much that the equivalent of studying, was fun for him. He wanted to do it. So it's not always the thing that you're most talented at. But in my case, I had a conception of an aspect of my identity or a trait that I wanted to have that on some levels is objectively a good trait to have. But on other levels, it's so tied into my identity that as soon as my ability to exhibit that trait gets challenged, my sense of worth is threatened. And then in order to preserve that sense of worth, I start telling myself narratives about, more strong narratives, because the narrative was already there. But the only way to keep myself from doing the homework and keep myself from having to face the fact that, I'm not getting worth from this was to ramp up the intensity of that critical mind that says you don't want to be that person. That it became, you didn't do this essay on time, you got a bad grade on this test, you're not a worthy person, you're not worthwhile. And that is way more extreme than it needed to be. Like an analogy that you may have heard of a frog in a pot of water. You put a frog in a pot of room temperature water, and you turn on the heat on the stove. The frog does not notice each consecutive uptick in temperature in the water. It is too gradual a change. And so the frog will boil alive without noticing that the water has gotten any hotter. Now, if you dropped it directly into boiling water, it would jump right out because that's a shocking change. But for me, each consecutive step of more and more aggressive negative self-talk did make me do that homework more because I had given myself this awful, awful outcome if it didn't get done. Okay, now I'm operating based on fear. My primary emotional relationship to completing tasks is anxiety. That's what I just made for myself. By giving myself that narrative, investing in that solution to the problem, now I'm an anxious person who thinks that, and a depressed person too, right? Because if I ramp up the anxiety to get the work done, sometimes it works, right? But sometimes it's not. And the higher I have to ramp it, the less frequently it's going to work because the anxiety is going to start getting in my way. When it doesn't work, now I have no self-worth. So now I'm depressed. So this is this story, right? I was diagnosed in my junior year of high school, so I was 17, with generalized anxiety and depression. And I was given Lexapro. And it helped. It helped me manage stuff. Finished off high school, not super psyched about it, still kind of struggling with all the same things. Get into college, I did 3 years of college, still struggling with the same thing, and then just about a year ago, my mother, bless her living soul, said, "Hey Andrew, maybe you don't have anxiety and depression. Maybe anxiety and depression is the result of ADHD. And I was like, ADHD. So like little kids running around screaming, bouncing off the walls is what you're saying I have? And she said, go read this book. And she gave me a book. I don't remember the name of the author or the name of the book because I read it before I had gotten on Vyvanse and started being treated for ADHD. But I'll put it in the description or something like that for you. And so we looked into it, right? And so turns out when you get into a pattern that emphasizes short-term gratification, in my example, not doing your homework, going and doing something else instead. So it's prioritizing short-term gratification over long-term investment in things that are actually important. What else does this sound like? It sounds like addiction. It's the same thing. Addiction is a really nice way, and take that how I mean it, not how it sounds. Addiction is really useful when you're in that problem. It's a useful way to just get out of it for a little while, to just feel okay for a minute, and often get out of my own mind and body so I don't have to, be identifying with this problem. But also it just makes the emphasis on short-term gratification even stronger. So this thing gets really, really messy really, really fast. This is why I cringe when someone goes, oh, Andrew, you're so smart. Like my mom told a story. Me and my mom, my brother, and my stepdad went to dinner last night. And my mom told a story about when I was a really little kid. I don't know how old I was, but I was tiny. I wanted, I think it was Lifesaver mints. And it was right before dinner. My mom was like, it's going to spoil your appetite. You don't want to eat sugary stuff before dinner. No. And I was like, well, what if I had wanted to eat some vegetables? Would you have told me no? And she was like, no, that would have been fine, right? Because it's vegetables. And I said, okay, well, isn't mint a plant? So technically, if you had to categorize mint as a type of food, it'd be a vegetable. And yeah, that's pretty clever, I guess. What my mom said was, Andrew, that's really clever. You know what? Okay, you can have a mint. You can have some mints. That gives me the belief that I if I can be clever enough, the rules don't apply to me. That is super dangerous. And subconsciously, I integrated that if I can just find some semantic loophole, or if I can just, oh, I didn't write this essay for you, but instead I wrote, a 5-page short story. I hope you like it. Look how cute I am. So it was invest in what you're good at, which was this kind of quick cleverness, because it'll pay off. And it did for a while, but I never was able to sit down and put my nose to a grindstone. I was never able to take failure well. Probably from from 5th grade until at least when I was 18, I had another pattern that is the same manifestation of the same thing, which is I'm a quick learner, but I don't know how to practice. So I would get a new instrument and learn it. And I'm a quick learner because I put those connections together. So learn how to play the instrument very, very quickly. The actual techniques of placing your finger in between 2 frets and plucking, how to hold a pick, that stuff, that I could make a sound and I could remember the chord shapes. And so within a few days, I could play a song. And then if I wanted to get any better at that instrument than that, I was utterly useless, because then it was going to be practice. Then it was going to be not instant gratification. And so throughout my youth, I have accumulated, I think last count was I know how to play 12 different instruments, and have played 12 different instruments throughout my life. And I'm good at exactly one of them. And that one is my voice. I'm a good singer because I stick with it, because I literally cannot put that instrument down. And I love to talk so damn much. It's not too far off. Mouth sounds, right? So the one instrument that I continued to practice was because it's physically connected to my body. This is a pattern that I think is encouraged by a lot of things. One of them is kind of this everyone gets a trophy sort of thing. One of them is digital media. I mean, I'm a YouTuber, if I can give myself that term. So obviously I love digital media. I really don't think there's any reason to disparage it. However, it's different than other media. It's different than television, it's different than print, it's different than a lot of things. And I think it is doing things to us that if we are not part of that process, we're going to get taken in by it. Yeah, social media. The fact that I can take my phone out and just get a hit of dopamine whenever the heck I want, that's not super good for people who want to be able to commit long periods of time to a project that will come to fruition eventually. And not everyone has this problem in this day and age, because for example, my brother happens to love engineering so much that it's easy for him to practice it. So he practiced practicing. He knows how to put aside his desires in the moment for something he knows future him will want. Since last May, I've been on Vyvanse. I went off of Lexapro, I think since November, and also have been re-narrativizing myself based on everything I just said. And I am doing so much better. I would not be here on this channel making this video if it were a year ago, because I lived alone last spring semester, and it was really, really not good. It was you're not going to make a YouTube video or write a poem or a short story if you're not showering, if you're not doing your laundry, if you're not eating food. I was not able to use my executive function to do those things. That's how bad it was. That instant gratification was the 10 minutes it would take me to make food was not worth waiting. I'm a lot better now. And in the therapy and the medication and the re-narrativizing and the work and the conversation and the practice and the discipline practice has been a big thing. But yes, my patterns have changed. My natural responses to things are different. That's massive. The chemical that I put into my body, Vyvanse, every single morning to help me do this stuff, yes, incredibly important. I don't want to be on it forever. I don't think I have to be on it forever. But it's incredibly useful in the process of retraining. There are a few nuggets that I've pulled away from this process that I've found to be mad useful that you might like. Bear with me as a person who introduced myself in the last video as Mr. Thinky Think. faith, which actually makes sense, that if, as Mr. Thinky Think, faith would be the thing that would solve my problem. Russell Brand said this in one of his short videos recently. I'll link to it. Faith is useful in discipline, and vice versa. That by engaging in a discipline that is not going to make you feel good in the moment, but will make you feel good long term, that is saying, I don't know better than the collective mind or, Buddha's rishis and mystics over thousands of years. I don't know better than people who are happy. I mean, people who are happy have discipline. And to claim that my feeling in the moment of, I don't want to do this, which isn't a, whiny, complainy thing. It is a biologically programmed survival instinct that if you want to have worth as a human being, you don't have worth as a human being. And by attempting this, it will only be further proven to you. That's what it feels like. Everything in my body and mind is saying, do not attempt to practice discipline. And that's where the faith is necessary, to say, everything that I trust and believe and everything that feels the most fundamental to who I want to be and how I think a harmonious life is lived, all of that says that you do the thing anyway, even though it doesn't feel good in the moment because it's good for you. Like the ultimate of this is meditation, which looks like a waste of time. You're literally sitting there doing nothing. And in capitalism, it's so unproductive, the market value is zero. But one of the most rewarding things long term, or so I've heard. Meditation is one of those practices that I have not integrated into my life yet. But to have the faith to say, this is not going to feel good, the closest experiential data I have says don't do this, I'm going to do it anyway, because what I'm doing now is not working, I clearly don't know, it can't be worse than this, and to surrender, and to trust that the outcome will care for you, that you can go into the scary thing, and that what's really scary is the belief that you've constructed and the narrative you've constructed and not the thing itself. And that is so freeing. I don't like the equation of faith with belief because to me, belief is what got me into this problem. Faith is what's getting me out of it. So I don't think anyone doesn't have attention deficit or executive function deficit. I think everyone has that. The challenge is surrendering the stories around it. I hope this was useful to you or entertaining to you. And yeah, I'm WordPerson. Thanks for watching.